Welcome to Resilient in Business, a podcast where we dive into insights, strategies, and systems to help you build scalable, thriving businesses. My name is Jad Atwe. I'm an engineer, an entrepreneur, and a business coach. Our intention from this show is to provide value and inspire entrepreneurs to keep pushing forward no matter the challenges. If you enjoy the content, subscribe and help us spread the message. Now, let's get into today's episode. I'm very excited to be joined here with Sue Firth. Sue is a business psychologist. She's an advisor. She's an expert when it comes to building resilience, leadership, and managing stress. So thank you, Sue, for joining us today. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Jad. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start with your journey. How did it evolve? How did it progress until today, becoming a coach for executives?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, mine is not really all that funny, I guess. It's just that I'm getting older now. And when I look back at the process, I guess it was sort of fairly standard back then. You took a first degree, you were pushed to do a second degree because you couldn't practice without it. So being a psychologist was kind of just the first stage. Then I had to push really quite hard over several years because I went self-employed to achieve my chartered status. And throughout that time, I was partly employed at times and then self-employed at other times. And I really worked out, if I'm very honest with you, I'm one of those maverick people who doesn't respond well to getting told what to do. So I was almost better if I ran the show. So I think once I worked that one out, I obviously had to realize, well, I've got to earn money. And I knew how to be a business psychologist, but back then it was not quite well accepted. And the reason is because the word psychology was scaring people. So it was how to make that more palatable and how to get better accepted. So you had to choose A, a target market, and B, an appropriate topic. And for me, I chose stress because I'd had somebody in my degree who had been a really great professor and he taught me a great deal. And I think just taking an interest in a passion was the best way to then move forward with something that I could turn into a living. So I started teaching, if you would call it that, but I'd say professional speaking is a better term for it now. But back then it was training, it was teaching, it was whatever. And really, I loved it. Any excuse to get on the platform. And I know that's a very extrovert thing to say, but I did. Now, wind on years later, about 50% of my income comes through professional speaking, standing on a platform and making key points. I have to say I've also become an expert in managing change because I think that was very important. It was where businesses were making mistakes and stressing people. And then really, because my target market were executives, several of them would approach me, if not on the day, then afterwards. And that's how the coaching started to develop because they would say, I've got somebody I'm concerned about or whatever it would be. So it's not always talking about stress with them, but it comes from a background where they're not where they want to be and I want to help them. So really, that's how I got to the stage where I am today, she said.
How do they, first of all, how do they realize that this is the time to hire a person like you?
I think everybody has heard of coaching, but where they perhaps fall down is the different types of coaching. And there is something called leadership coaching. There's also, to be fair, business strategy coaching, which is probably more financially based, it's sort of senior execs who need to really have an input, which says, okay, what's your overall strategy, where's your vision, the clarity on your mission, and so forth. I was less gifted at talking about that, although I was experienced in it. And I found that where my personal bit could really fit, almost like a lock, and a key, was when somebody felt that they'd reached some kind of point, but they were stuck. And when they get stuck, the symptoms show up. They get stressed, they disengage, they get unhappy, they haven't got the answers, they can't make decisions, whatever it is. And that tends to come to someone else's attention. So if it's the individual and they're an exec, they've been in the audience usually and they've heard me. So for them, it feels you're an approachable person, Sue. If they are working for a member of that group, then they're more likely to get approached by that entrepreneur or senior exec who will say, look, I've met somebody. I find she's approachable or she's given me clarity over a few messages. It's quite positive as a hook. You'll enjoy this. So it gets positioned to them as a productive or positive thing to do. And I think that's how my type of coaching, I've come to call mine private advisory. I've called it professional coaching, personal advice. It's stupid really, but it's all It's all to probably try not to make them feel like they're about to talk to a therapist.
And what do you find are where do people get stuck?
Yeah, there are several reasons. I think top of the list is if I can use my hands to illustrate, what gets somebody here in a job will not get them there. And that gap is picked up when they start to go through one-to-ones and they are being asked, what do you want? And so if they are already at director level, but they have aspirations to become part of the top exec team, they have to recognize that some of their approaches have to become more strategic than working in the business in it all the time. Now, what that means is they're too detail conscious, they're possibly annoying some members of their team, they're not delegating effectively, and they're getting feedback, but they don't know how to alter it. So some of it is they simply don't know how, and therefore taking advantage of someone who's worked with people for as long as I have, which is about 35 years now, it's just quicker. It's just quicker because they can get from A to C by going through B much faster if they get support and coaching, and that's really where it comes from. But picking it up so that they don't feel there's a negative and they don't feel that they've been, it's not polarized. You're not productive to unproductive. You just start to feel like you want more, but you don't know how to get it.
Yes. So it's a personal case. I guess is there a major theme of issues that arise, or is it like a case by case basis?
Yeah, I think that's fair. There are some similarities. So when it comes to stress, for example, an individual is fundamentally not as effective as they used to be. They're aware of it. And they know that they've become unhappy or they are more unproductive, and they know that. And it's either ineffective management of their time or it's ineffective management of their skill, utilizations of their stuff. And they're picking this up. They make more errors, or they're more, or when it manifests in through stress symptoms, they've withdrawn more. They want to disengage. They're really slipping quite hard and fast. We don't want that for their sake. So most businesses have policies now around stress, which helps managers be guided to pick this up. And again, if someone's been in my audience, they've been told really that it's so much more constructive to support somebody than it is to allow them to slip too far. So I think there are some similarities, there's no doubt. And then, yes, you're right, it is more bespoke in terms of the specifics that trigger that request. So it can be because they've had a one-to-one and that individual simply lacks clarity, focus, or they're making mistakes, or they would like to be even better than they are. And basically both of them can be corrected or supported through coaching.
And in your experience, what are the best ways to mitigate stress, or what can executives do so that they have less of it?
Effectively, really, everybody in life needs to recognize that most of the time they operate or could operate very effectively, but where they need to learn a couple of things. Top executives, senior people, the ones who are either owner managers or who drive their lives for themselves have a number of extremely similar personality traits. They are very focused, very driven, very capable individuals. This is irrespective of intelligence. It is, at the end of the day, a personality trait. So it's in our DNA. But there are several things where they make mistakes. They push even harder in order to rectify a situation instead of leaning out. Leaning out means taking time out, getting some rest, getting a reboot. If they lean in, they're at risk of getting very overtired, which is where they make mistakes. They don't make such feasible decisions. They then begin to feel unhappy with something that they're doing or delivering, and then they get, as I called it, stuck. Now, some of the solution is to, when they come and see me, is to really just help them tell their story first, much like you asked me, tell me how you got here. And in many ways, just in doing that, you realize, because you're very practiced, that you're hearing things, some of which are constructive, some which are not. And so very gently, I say to people, okay, it's my role to help you. I'm going to work with you for starters, but my role is to help here. Are you telling me constructive stuff that habits and rituals and processes that underpin effective performance? Or are you really, at the end of the day, a bit chaotic? You're running around undisciplined. You really can't get stuff done. You couldn't manage your way out of a paper bag if you tried, type thing. And you can pick this up really quite quickly. They're very constructive, very driven, usually hungry for information, in which case they want the help. So it's quite simple at that point.
Yeah. Hey, a quick commercial break. This podcast is brought to you by Business Optimization Partners, a firm that specializes in helping entrepreneurs systemize their business and transform it into a professionally managed asset that is scalable and easy to operate. If you wish to learn more, download the guide to running a professionally managed business that's available in the description. Now, back to the episode. So this podcast is called Resilience in Business, and you happen to talk about resilience a lot. I'm curious, what elements do you find are important to cultivate personal resilience and keep pushing forward?
That's fair. I think that there are 3 different types, and I'm not certain that people necessarily separate them. There's mental resilience, which is mental toughness. There's the emotional resilience, which is, do you have the ability to bounce back? It doesn't necessarily mean from something as traumatic as an enormous event, but it means the cumulative types of events that disrupt your daily life, or that take you by surprise, or that shock you, or they make you feel, blimey, that was horrible. And really physical. Have you put in place the physical tools that help you reboot, reset, repair? And if you have, then you will be able to sustainably perform. So for me, resilience is part of a bigger toolkit, which is very much about sustainable performance. And where we see it working, a lot of people have put in place appropriate habits, positive values, constructive responses to situations. They are calm in the response to a stressful situation. They take a bite-sized chunk. And if I may, I'm going to be very straight with you. The remedy for stress is always action. So in the case of that individual, they make a decision and they take action on that. This is one of the reasons why, to wrap back, people get stuck, because if they can't make a decision on a situation, they'll come and see somebody. And that's really a good thing. Don't drown, don't drift, and don't wait.
It's important to get out of stagnation. That's this is the key. Yeah, absolutely. And so around that, through a set of questions, you just make people aware of their case, or what's typically their approach to help them cultivate more resilience.
It's really more about me working out what habits they have got. And if they're only relying on 2 or 3, then they're probably not able to hold their resilience up particularly well. So, for example, mental toughness comes from the ability to step back from a situation, stay calm in the face of it, work out the impact of what's happened, then take a bite-sized chunk of what they need to decide and take action on that. If they then take the next bite-sized chunk and the next one after that, they develop the confidence around being able to manage that situation. And on the back of confidence comes the resilience to respond well. Once they have learned to do that, that toolkit gets rinse, repeat in any major situation. And even the small ones, which comes back to my second point. If you work out what small things you are doing that underpin your life and keep you fit, well, and relatively happy, then you develop good physical responses and well-being to most things that come at you. That puts a very stable performance and a response and ability to cope with your performance in place, so that when something peaks, demands increase, which they inevitably will, you still utilize those tools in your kit bag. You don't drop them in favor of panicking, running around, or struggling. You maintain them, because being fit and well, getting enough sleep where you can to the best of your ability, despite the fact that mentally you might now be processing stuff, getting enough support, making sure that you work out what does this situation actually need, sharing the responsibility for that if necessary, delegating where you've got a team who can take some of it off you, or looking for answers, solutions, input, coaching and mentoring if needed, is a much more effective response to the situation than shouldering it on your own, which means it gets heavier and heavier. The risk is then you get very overtired and you can see what happens next.
Yeah. What other mistakes do you find leaders do?
So the one that I said at the very beginning is one of the biggest. where they have got so used to their coping mechanism working, and they are like targeted darts. So they have exceptional, simple rules which they follow. They're very focused, very driven, very goal-oriented, and they like to win. So success means winning. Winning comes with success, and that develops a very strong desire for dopamine. So that's 2 or 3 things all at the same time. When they can't get enough dopamine because they're not winning or succeeding, it's one of the reasons why they get stuck. So then they need to come and see somebody to work out what's happened. But because they are really driven by success, winning, and the dopamine hit, then they are going to use that same tool in most situations. They will drive at it. This often means they will work longer hours. So that's an error up to a point. It might work in the short term, to be honest, Jab, but it's not likely to work over the longer, more sustainable term. The second is that they forget to delegate. So I'll do it. I'll get sorted. It would be better if I just do that. So then they just do that. And you can't do that if you're going to become capable at a very senior level. This is why I said to you, what got you here won't get you there. And therefore, strictly speaking, they have to work out, okay, what do I want? If they're a one-man band and they're very effective as they are, and to be honest, I'm not much bigger than that. I have a team of 3. So, there's only so many people I can give my stuff to. So my rule of thumb is I work 6 weeks very hard, and then I press the reboot. So then I press the reset. I go away for just a few days. If I want to stay longer, I will, by my agreement, try and see if I can work while I'm away. So, for example, I run one-to-ones online. If I'm doing that with the US, they don't need to know where I am anyway. They wouldn't be expecting to see me face-to-face. So the answer to your question is long, but it's fundamentally much the same. They make errors by continuing to load the pressure on themselves instead of sharing or instead of stepping back in order to look more strategically at that.
Yeah. So a major part of how you help them is like giving that permission, telling them it's okay to delegate. It's okay to
to share, to offload, it is really. I mean, however I ask it, I'm fundamentally saying, okay, how have we got here? What's working well? What needs tweaking? And I think inevitably, if I'm honest, it is tweaked. Most of the time, people who are on the journey for success don't recognize they're doing a lot right. Secondly, it is a journey. It's not a destination. But a lot of people who have managed to gain quite a decent amount of money think, great, I'm there now. This is successful. But they're never satisfied. It will never be enough. So you've got to be careful that you don't burn out simply by this relentless pursuit of success without even really defining what is success. That's another error.
And sometimes the ego gets into it. They want to be the hero. They want to be the person that's doing everything, having all the answers.
Yeah, and that's not super clever. And the simple reason why is because usually your family will tell you that they miss you. There's something that you're sacrificing in order to be able to do that. Now, you can sacrifice time, work long hours. If your timetable and your lifestyle allows for it, you can work from 7 a.m. till late at night. But that isn't all that usually exists now. There's quite a lot of pressure to do even more than that. And think of things like the popular book and theory, which is the 5 a.m. club. So now there are quite a few execs who wake at 5 and think that's normal. Well, your body is still repairing that.
Yeah.
So, it's my personal preference that it needs to have some kind of balance, but they get it wrong if they think we're talking about work-life balance, because execs are the same person, irrespective of where you point them towards. If that's not balance, they need to learn. They need to learn the balance between the need for dopamine and rest.
I know this could be a personal case-by-case basis, but what do you feel like? How long is the engagement with someone like you? Is it somewhere where you come and help them over a few months, or is it years in order to regulate and actually understand? And
no, I think that's fair. No, that's really fair to ask. Thank you. There are people out there. There will always be people out there who will take you on a slower journey
Yes.
And they sell you the idea that that's needed. And there will equally be a lot of people out there who value being able to see somebody over time. And I've got some long-standing clients, although that's not the norm for me. I worked out quite a long time ago, if I'm honest, that most executives don't have the patience for that. So they like to get from A to C without going through B for very long. So my process is three sessions, mostly conducted one a month over 3 months. And I don't claim to fix everything. There's no need. But if you fix the top thing that's the issue right now, they learn a better way and a more constructive approach, which usually when they come back the second time, they've got feedback on, I put these things in place, I put some plans, I did some different goals. I'm feeling a little bit better, but I've got some questions. And that brings us to the third session. That means they then do an action plan around that. If they desire it, it's then on more of a bespoke basis, or I touch base by prior agreement every 3 months.
Thank you for all of this. It's really great information, and it's important to have awareness around what's happening with us, where we're at, in order to identify how we can move forward. What's your final advice? What mechanisms can people have in place in order to stay healthy and sane?
Yeah, well, stay healthy and sane is such a great idea, isn't it? I mean, I work hard at mine, I'll be honest with you. I don't think you can ever plan for what's going to come at you in life. You can only do your best. I found myself yesterday morning, for example, I was about to present to a group of people and I rocked up to an address which I had looked for, but it turned out to be their old address. So it was the wrong site. I was now 20 minutes from where I needed to be. I'm embarrassed, I feel stupid, and I'm working out how on earth did this happen, but I can't waste time doing that. I just needed to put in the new sat-nav coordinates and just go for it. So most of the time, that's like a metaphor for our lives. Don't waste too much time overthinking about a situation. Work out what you need to do, get constructive as much as possible, own up to anything that you think didn't go well, and then work out what needs to happen right now. And I would say, on the whole, that constructive, staying calm, responding to situations is probably a learned skill for me. I don't think it comes naturally to me. So that helps me stay sane. And I think the stuff which helps me stay well, many and varied, but I'll give you a really thought-potted version. Lots of very regular exercise, but doesn't have to be super intense. I'm 60 years older. I'm not going to run a marathon at this stage. But I do enjoy, dancing, my rowing. I enjoy Pilates. So I do one of a hard, fast, because I'm an adrenaline junkie, versus one quieter, calmer. Hobby. I watch what I eat. I'm always going to do that. I can't afford to get... There'd be no point me talking about stress and health and well-being if I get massive. No one will believe a thing I say. And I think, and I love humour. I think the world needs to revolve around happiness and humour. And if I can stick with that as a simple model, I love being with my kids. They're 25 and 27 years old, and I don't think they'll ever grow up enough for me to feel like they're not my kids. So that was a very short, potted version of how do I stay safe, sane and well.
All good advice. If someone wants to get in touch with you, work with you, what's the best way?
They would be very welcome indeed to look at my LinkedIn profile. I'm on Instagram. I also have a site of my own, www.suefirthltd.com, and we have a contact page on there. You're very welcome to use. There's also a lot of information on it in general, so there's quite a few resources. And I circle around resources a lot. I like doing PDFs. There's one, for example, on managing change on the site right now that's a free download. I've recently written something on ADHD because I found several of my clients either have complex problems for their children or they want a bit of help. And I think, funnily enough, I seem to attract in, which you'll laugh at, I know, because I'm so extroverted, but I do attract in quite a few people who are introverts and they struggle terribly with this spotlight and managing their energy. So we've got something on that, not on the site, but write to me if you want it, and I'll send you a couple of links for it. So lots of stuff that I do is completely free. I think that's important in life, to give away what you can. as well as, making sure that it's of value. And that to me is second nature to the way I think and work. And that's the reason why my private brand is everything I do with you in mind.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for joining us and sharing, being generous with you.
You're very welcome indeed. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into the Resilient in Business podcast. This show is all about providing valuable insights and inspiring entrepreneurs to keep pushing forward no matter the challenges. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and help us spread the message. See you on the next one.